Management Science, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University. She has 15 plus years of academic experience, and she have many good publications in and also the book chapters in Scopus listed journals. So we have pleasure to have you, ma'am, here. Over to you, ma'am, Priya, ma'am. Ma'am, you are muted.
Yes, I hope I can share my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it
It's
visible
visible.
now? Okay. I have logged in from two screens, two laptops. So I must be visible at two spaces. Don't just get this about it. So should we initiate the session?
Yes, ma'am.
Should we initiate the session? Okay. So so the theme that I was supposed to ask to be orienting you people today was multivariate data analysis. And if my system helps me out, because the reason why I have logged in from two different systems is because one, I'm going to use a slideshow, and from other, I am going to try to demonstrate an SPSS thing, because I was told by ma'am that no one has actually indulged with SPSS hands-on work. So I would try to do that, provided my technology helps me, my other system helps me, and the internet also does not go off, right? So the theme for today that I'm going to speak about is multivariate data analysis using SPSS. Radhika has already introduced me, so I don't think I need to make any further. So while I'm going to speak about multivariate data analysis, I know in fact, every one of us knows what a variable is. What a variable is. So that simple nomenclature of multivariate means when many variables come together, that's the most foundational definition. So when many variables come together and then they are processed, that is as simple as understanding multivariate data. Multivariate data many faces. It has got many typology, and the typology handpicked according to the nature of the data or the nature of the variable, right? So I'm not going to speak much about it now, because at this point of time, in the subsequent part of my session, we are going to speak of the in detail. So for now, let me initiate by speaking what is a multivariate data. Let us first start with defining what is multivariate. Multivariate analysis refers to all the statistical techniques that simultaneously analyze, let me use my pen, analyze multiple measurements. As I said in the earlier slide, so you have multiple variables or data. So all these variables are measured and hence they become a data, right? So multivariate data analysis simply means when multiple measurements or multiple variables come together about a certain subject, right? Now, subjects could be individuals, subjects could be objects. I'm not going to speak about, or subjects could also be situations and circumstances. So I'm not going to speak elaborately about what a subject is, but multivariate analysis simply means that, it is when you analyze, when you make a concoction of many variables and then you try to analyze them, that is what a multivariate data analysis is. And when we speak about multivariate data analysis, they have to be measured. Data or variable is anything that takes a value. So variable is something that takes a value. And for a value to be there has to be a scale for measurement. There has to be a scale for measurement. And hence the scale for measurement are four types. I'm not going to elaborate on it because I know already aapka ye ho chuka hai. Nominal scale, wherein you give a value to a certain variable, right? It may or may not be representation of it. Like the simplest example of a nominal scale could be male. While we are coding on SPSS for a male, it is like nominal variable, wherein for male you give number 1, female you give number 2, for third gender you give number 3. So does it mean man is first and women is second and third gender is third? No, it's not so. It's just a pseudo value. I'm again saying pseudo value that gives recognition to a certain variable. Next is the ordinal scale, which orders across. Then there is an interval scale, and ratio scales are the most reliable scales. In fact, most of the people who work on research, their research gets a very important pedestal if they have a ratio scale. But again, let me give you a disclaimer here. Ratio scale, yeah, ordinal scale, yeah, nominal scale, yeah, interval scale depends upon the nature of your research and the nature of your variable. Just because ratio scale is the most dependent scale or the most preferred scale, I just cannot put my research into ratio scale क्योंकि मेरा nature of variable में काम नहीं करता है, right? So what decides the scale is the nature of your variable. Now, once we have defined it, let us now see the different types of analysis, multivariate data analysis. मैंने नाम तो दे दिया multivariate data analysis और मुझे दिया गया है 1.5 घंटे का टाइम, जिसमें से 5-10 मिनट हम क्वेश्चन आंसर के लिए लेंगे, तो 60-70 मिनट में मल्टीवेरिएट डेटा एनालिसिस पढ़ाना किसी भी इंसान के लिए और शायद रोबो के लिए भी इम्पॉसिबल है. सारे लोग एआई कर रहे हैं, इसलिए मैंने सोचा रोबो का भी नाम ले लेते हैं. So it's impossible for anyone to teach multivariate data analysis in 60-70 minutes. In fact, it may take a complete semester if we want to. But then I felt it's important for me to introduce the whole taxonomy of studies, or the whole taxonomy of multivariate data analysis. Now, broadly, multivariate data analysis is based on two things. The dependence, if you want to define a dependence relationship or an independent relationship, right? That's the first question that I need to answer. Now, once I answer if it's a dependent relationship, I need to again speak about what are the number of variables that I have. If I have only one dependent variable, and obviously if there is one dependent variable, presume it is one dependent variable, one independent variable which is dependent on one dependent variable, right? So this is the dependent variable. So if there is only one dependent variable, then we can go for, we need to again state whether it's a matricular scale or it's a non-metric scale. So it's an ordinal scale or the rest of the scales. If it's a matricular scale, then multiple regression works. So one dependent variable has to be there for multiple regression work. So does it mean multiple regression use करते वक्त मेरे पास एक dependent और एक independent होना चाहिए? नहीं. It only says one dependent variable. There could be. किसी को कुछ बोलना था? Does anyone wants to speak anything? So नहीं. So multiple regression, as the name suggests, it is regression across multiple variables, right? So the variables can be multiple, but the dependent variable has to be one. So regression, koi use kar raha hai multiple regression, they need to understand that multiple regression ho gaya ya simple regression ho gaya. The whole criteria of using a regression is you need to have one dependent variable. Independent variables could be multiple in the case of multiple regression. And next is conjoint analysis. The second type of this is matricular. If there is matricular usage, then it is conjoint analysis. Then if it's a non-metric research or non-metric variable, then we have multiple and all that. We are not going to speak much about it because very rarely people work on it. And if someone has any specific concerns, they may please express. Now, this is the case of this whole block is wherein there is one dependent variable. But if there are several dependent variables, yani there is an independent variable and there is a dependent variable which are multiple. In that case, we go this way. We go this way. Again, we answer there if it's a non-metric or a metric. If it's a non-metric, then there is canonical correlational analysis, which helps you to process non-metric data with multiple dependent variables. And if it's a metrical R data, then we need to identify, fine, the dependent variable is metrical R, but what is the independent variable? If the independent variable is also metrical R, then we go again for canonical correlational analysis. And if it's the dependent variable is metrical R, but the independent variable is non-metric, then we go for multiple analysis of multiple analysis. Then comes the relationship wherein we need to speak about independent variables, wherein objects हो गया, केस स्टडीज हो गए और वेरिएबल्स हो गए. अब ये दो के बारे में मैं नहीं बात करूंगी बिकॉज दीज आर क्वालिटेटिव रिसर्च एंड आई हार्डली थिंक एनीवन एट PhD does qualitative research in our university. Maybe in other universities they do. So I'm not going to speak about this. And if the independent variable is there is an there is an independence of relationship, and I need to understand the independence, how independent one association is with the other, or one variable is with the other. Then I have two things. One is confirmatory factor analysis, and one is exploratory factor analysis. If I have not written exploratory, it means it is exploratory factor analysis. So variables wherein you are trying to keep the variables independent. So ये जो arrows दिख रहे हैं आपको, ये नहीं है, right? So there is no association, but you want to know how A, B, C up to N or up to Z, how are they related to each other by not being dependent on each other. If you know कि ये variables independent है, दूसरे से बिल्कुल भी related नहीं है, फिर क्या उनको जोड़े रखता है? If you want to understand that, that is called as a factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis, right? So what we will do is, as I said, it's humanly impossible for anyone, to even think about completing all this. So I'm going to only handpick two things. Which I suppose is the most relevant to studies in management and commerce, and to some extent even economics, right? Even economics, but I'm not sure if it is explicitly relevant to economics, but I'm sure that it is, that those handpicked things that I'm going to speak about, they are relevant to management science for sure, and to some extent commerce, right? So structural equation modeling, I'm not going to speak about. I completely work on structural equation modeling. यानी मैं बाकी किसी पे आपके सामने इतने typologies of multivariate data analysis है, मैं इन सब पे काम नहीं करती हूँ. I simply work on structural equation modeling. Okay? हम लोग आज देखेंगे factor analysis. Confirmatory factor analysis इसलिए नहीं देख रहे क्योंकि it's a part of structural equation modeling, और structural equation modeling पढ़ाने के लिए कम से कम 15 दिन लगते हैं. So कम से कम, and that too if there is a coordination, a well-made coordination. So confirmatory factor analysis is a part of structural equation modeling. So we are going to today speak about factor analysis. Why factor analysis? I'm going to tell you in a short while. Factor analysis क्यों देखेंगे हम लोग? क्योंकि factor analysis is, I think, the most relevant for you. And okay, right. So what are we going to see today is structural equation modeling? No, we are going to see factor analysis and we are going to see multiple regression. So ये दो चीजें जो मैंने circle की हुई है, these two are most relevant to your area of study, and hence maybe because of that we are going to speak much about it. So any questions here? यहाँ पे किसी को कोई questions है? If anyone has any questions here. To understand the typology. So with this, let's go on with if there are no questions, I presume because there hasn't been any. Acha, let me see the chat box. There could be any. Oh no, chat box is flooded with attendance only. Okay, so after the understanding this, the whole taxonomy of what a multivariate data analysis is, today we are going to dwell on two. As I said, factor analysis and regression, multiple regression. So when we speak about that, let us start about understanding what is a multiple regression. As the name suggests, there is one dependent variable, which we have already explained here. There is one dependent variable, and there could be multiple independent variables, right? So hence it is called as multiple regression. So one dependent variable and one independent variable, multiple independent variable, and all these independent variable could be either matricular or non-matricular. Right? So that's what a regression, multiple regression would mean. And next is structural equation modeling, which we are not going to see. इसकी खासियत ये है, I only work on it. इसकी खासियत ये है कि there could be multiple independent variables, multiple dependent variables, and all of these, and even these multiple dependent variables could be studied together. And those could be matricular and non-matricular. So that is what it is. So what we are going to see is multiple regression. We are going to try to end with it. Now, multivariate model building. So how do we build a multivariate model? First is we define the research question, the objectives, and multiple variable analysis technique that we are going to see. Now, what does the define the research question mean? First of all, we need to define the concept that is fundamental to the relationships. So, अगर किसी को याद होगा मेरा पहला वाला लेक्चर ओबी पे जो था पॉजिटिव साइकोलॉजी पे, वहां पे I said it's very important for us to define a concept, and that concept would be operational definition or a theoretical definition, whichever you want to accept, adopt it as. So the first thing that we need to is define the research question, and then we, depending upon the research questions, we actually handpick. जैसे पिछला वाला slide ये बताया था, you need to handpick your multivariate analysis technique depending upon the nature of your variables and the data that you have. So once you define a research question, you define the concepts, and once you define the concept, then you handpick the multivariate technique, which has to be founded, which has to be having the foundation of a theory, that is your literature. After you define the research questions and the multivariate technique, you define the sample size. That is, you simply develop an analysis plan. You define a sample size, you estimate, you also define the nature of, depending upon the nature of your variable, and estimation methods. Once this is done, you actually define the assumptions. What are the fundamental assumptions of any multivariate data analysis? We assume that the data is normal. Or normality of a data क्या होता है? Can anyone answer that? Can anyone help me understand what is the normality of a data? आपका हुआ होगा ना data analysis या कुछ तो foundations of data के ऊपर. अच्छा, first of all, can everyone understand me? Okay, so what is a normality of a data? हुआ है? हुआ है ना? So what's a normal? What's a data? When do we call a data is normal? We call a data is normal when it goes across the bell curve. When it is across, sorry, excuse me for the drawing. This is not the exact well drawn thing, but when it goes across the bell curve, when it goes across the bell curve, this is called a normal data. Now, this is called as a bell curve data or a normality data or the Gaussian curve. It is also called as a Gaussian curve. So the first important presumption or an assumption that multivariate data analysis works through is, it says that every data is around the plus or minus 1 by 2 degrees of freedom from the mean. So all the data that you have, Santosh ji, please draw na kare screen pe. So all the data that you have is around this. 66% of the data that you have is around this. That is what a normality would mean. कि आपके पास extreme data नहीं है. आपके पास ये जो है, these are called as extreme data. Extreme data नहीं है. आपके जितने भी data है, that is around the normal curve, right? That is what the first assumption is. Second is ये जो extreme values है, इसे बोले जाते हैं outliers. हम लोग we will speak about it. And it also says, and the other assumption is it is linear. यानी independent variable में और dependent variable में the relationship is linear. It means it is either positive or negative, but it is not inert. ये नहीं चाहिए हमें. Inert means इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल का और डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल का एक दूसरे के साथ कोई भी रिलेशनशिप नहीं है. दैट इज नॉट एक्सेप्टेबल. दैट इज नॉट एक्सेप्टेबल. अगर ऐसा है, अगर आपका इंडिपेंडेंट और डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल प्लॉट करने के बाद आपका कुछ ऐसा आ रहा है, इट मीन्स आपका लिटरेचर रिव्यू ठीक नहीं है. So the assumption is, it says either there is a positive correlation or there is a negative correlation, but there is no, this straight line means that there is no association. And if there is no association, it means that the variables that you have picked are not apt. They are not correct. So you define the assumptions around the multivariate analysis. Then you estimate the multivariate model by defining the technique. नेक्स्ट इज यू इंटरप्रेट द वेरिएबल्स. जो आउटपुट आता है उसको इंटरप्रेट करते हैं. स्पेशली हमारे मतलब की होती है बीटा कोएफिशिएंट. दैट इज कोएफिशिएंट ऑफ योर वेरिएबल्स. एंड लास्ट इज you validate the multivariate, the output, you validate the beta coefficient depending upon how reliable your matrices is, and reliability is defined by the R square value. Reliability is defined by the R square value when it comes to the perspective of factor analysis. Right? Now I suppose we will dive deep, and then I would take questions if there are any. So how do you examine your data? First is, I said the presumption is it should be across the normal curve, the Gaussian curve. That is, it means that the data should be normal. It means most of your data should fall in the 66% or plus or minus 1 degrees of freedom from the mean. Zero is nothing but the mean. So आपका जितना भी data है वो इसमें ही है. इतने में ही है सारे. इतने में ही है. अगर आपका डेटा यहाँ कहीं है या यहाँ कहीं है, इट मीन्स यू हैव आउटलायर्स. और आउटलायर्स की खासियत क्या होती है? आउटलायर्स की खासियत ये होती है कि आपका जो ऐसा नॉर्मल बेल कर्व है उसको वो स्क्यू करते हैं. इसको वो स्क्यू करते हैं, यानी आपका डेटा जो है वो स्क्यू हो जाता है. या तो लेफ्ट स्क्यूड होता है, राइट स्क्यूड होता है, या लेफ्ट स्क्यूड होता है. सो आउटलायर्स बहुत ज्यादा नहीं होने चाहिए. कुछ है तो गुड, कुछ है तो good. It shows that your data is a representation of the real natural world. But then if there are too many outliers, then your data gets skewed and your work and you cannot use multivariate data analysis. Then it becomes tough for the system, for the whole calculations to happen. Next, we presume that the data is normal. We presume that there are no missing data. And if there are missing data, please give a treatment. There are imputation treatments in SPSS and other softwares. Please try to impute the data. Next is ensure that there are not too many outliers, and those which are there, they are genuine, they are true outliers, they are genuine outliers. Just check that. बहुत बार ऐसे होता है कि outliers manual error के वजह से या typical error के वजह से या social desirability function की वजह से हो जाते हैं. So just check that. Next is homoscedasticity. It means to what extent your variables are associated to each other and how well they are homogeneous. And last is linearity. Linearity, जैसे मैंने बताया, that they are related to each other either positively linear or negatively linear, but they are not inert to each other. This is inert. This is inert. It means both have no association. So there has to be a linear relationship. That is what. So जितना भी हम multivariate data analysis करेंगे, वो उनके लिए कम से कम ये 5 assumptions खरे होने चाहिए, सच होने चाहिए. At least these 5 have to be true. Now this is what I drew, normality, right? So this is normality. There should be no missing data. This is linearity. This is positively linear relationship. This is linearity. और ये जो बंदा है, ये जो response बाहर जा रहा है, this is called as an outlier. This is called as an outlier. And आपको ये तीनों ही functions मिलेंगे SPSS में to decide whether your data is normal or not. This is called as the normal curve or the Gaussian curve. ये आप check कर सकते हो. This is called as the linearity. This is also available, and this is called as the box plot, which is also there on SPSS. So पहले आपका data आपके हाथ में आते ही प्लीज ये चेक कर लीजिए कि आपका डेटा नॉर्मल है कि नहीं, कोई मिसिंग डेटा तो नहीं है, बहुत ज्यादा आउटलायर्स तो नहीं है, वरना आपका डेटा स्क्यू हो जाएगा, होमोस्केडास्टिसिटी तो नहीं है, और लास्ट इज लीनियरिटी है भी कि नहीं, राइट? सो लीनियरिटी अगर है वेल एंड सो ये 5 चीजें आप 5 एहतियात बरतेंगे बिफोर यू स्टार्ट अ मल्टीवेरिएट डेटा एनालिसिस. Now let's deep dive into, जैसे मैंने बताया था आपको, हम लोग 2 चीजें देखेंगे, 2 चीजें देखने की कोशिश करेंगे आज. और पहला वाला है फैक्टर एनालिसिस. Factor analysis is what? It's an interdependence technique whose primary objective is to define underlying structure amongst the variables. So what do? Factor analysis में you just try to understand what is the association, what is the structure between a variable. For example, आपके पास समझिए 10 variables है, variable A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. हो गया 10, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. H, I और ये J. समझिए आपके पास 10 क्वेश्चंस है आपके क्वेश्चनर में. जनरली मैंने देखा है हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी में बच्चे खुद अपना क्वेश्चनर बनाते हैं. तो समझिए मैंने अपना क्वेश्चनर बना दिया और उसमें 10 क्वेश्चन है, उसके रेस्पॉन्सेस मिल गए, मैंने डेटा फीड भी कर दिया. अब 10 क्वेश्चंस को मैं 10 वेरिएबल्स बोल के ट्रीट नहीं कर सकती. 10 वेरिएबल्स बोल के अगर ट्रीट करती हूँ तो इट बिकम्स वेरी हेक्टिक फॉर मी टू एनालाइज देम. सो व्हाट डू आई डू? आई क्लस्टर them. And then what do? I do factor analysis. So factor analysis helps me to cluster items or cluster questions. So this is one variable, क्योंकि ये सारे रिश्तेदार लग रहे हैं, ये सारे siblings हैं, सो दिस बिकम्स, ये 4 क्वेश्चंस मिलके मेरा वेरिएबल 1 हो गया, ये 3 मिलके मैं ये देख रही हूँ ये 3 बहुत ज्यादा एक दूसरे से रिलेटेड है, यानी एक दूसरे के भाई बंद हो लग रहे हैं। तो ये मैंने फैक्टर एनालिसिस किया और फिर मुझे जानकारी मिलती है कि ये वेरिएबल 2 है, और ये जो बाकी के 4 बच्चे हुए ये एक दूसरे के भाई बहन है। सो दिस बिकम्स वेरिएबल 3। क्या किया हमने? सिंपल, जितने सिंपली मैं बता रही हूँ उतना सिंपली सॉफ्टवेयर करता है। क्या किया, हमारे पास बहुत सारा क्राउड था क्वेश्चंस का, फैक्टर एनालिसिस हमें हेल्प करता है वो क्राउड को रिड्यूस करके मीनिंगफुली स्पेसिफिक वेरिएबल्स डिफाइन कर, स्पेसिफिक वेरिएबल्स के फॉर्म में डिफाइन करने। So factor analysis helps me to define the underlying structure amongst the variable if they are from the same nature. So it is kind of a clustering methodology. It's a clustering method to help me define variables. It's a statistical method for me to cluster items into variables. That is simply factor analysis. Now, how does the factor analysis process happen? It happens through this. Acha, before that, any questions here? Any questions here? किसी के पास कोई questions है अभी तक समझने में? Sorry. किसी को कोई questions है यहाँ तक? अगर है तो पूछ ले, फिर हम आगे चलते हैं. Okay. अगर है तो प्लीज अनम्यूट करके कभी भी पूछ सकते हैं. So the process of factor analysis is you first just define your problem, right? Research question or research problem, and then you decide whether it's an exploratory or a confirmatory. Now, as I said, it's going to be exploratory is something that we use in confirmatory is something that we use in structural equation modeling. So for now, we will see exploratory. Once exploratory is for confirmatory purpose, it comes under structural equation modeling, which is not possible for me to even orient you in the next in 60, 70 minutes that I have. So what remains is exploratory. Now, once I know that it is exploratory, I try to understand what is the factor analysis type, whether I need to group cases or group variables. अगर मुझे जो ग्रुप कर रही हूँ वो केसेस है, then that becomes a Q type factor analysis or cluster analysis भी बोला जाता है. It becomes a Q type factor analysis or a cluster analysis, and this is generally used for finance. For students who are from finance, they use cluster analysis format of factor analysis, right? Q type factor analysis is generally used by finance students. And for behavioral students, it is R type factor analysis. It is R-type factor analysis for behavioral students. Now, when these two come together, then that helps you to define your research design by variable, scale and sample size, जिसके बारे में हम already बात कर चुके हैं, variables के बारे में और scale के बारे में. Sample size factor analysis के लिए minimum sample size होना चाहिए 50 का. But this is the bare minimum, और 50 पे भी कोई सॉफ्टवेयर आपको एनालिसिस में हेल्प नहीं करेगा. सो व्हाट शुड बी द सैंपल साइज? सैंपल साइज ऐसा होना चाहिए कि जितने वेरिएबल्स हैं आपके उससे 5 गुना ज्यादा आपका सैंपल साइज होना चाहिए. समझिए मेरे 10 क्वेश्चंस हैं, मेरे क्वेश्चनर में 10 क्वेश्चंस है, तो मेरा सैंपल साइज होना चाहिए कम से कम 5 गुना, दैट इज 50. अगर मेरे इसमें 20 क्वेश्चंस है तो कम से कम मेरा सैंपल साइज होना चाहिए 100 का. बट हैविंग सेड दैट, दिस इज द बेयर मिनिमम, बहुत कम से कम वाला बोल रही हूँ. बट 5 गुना होना चाहिए, बट आइडियली 20 गुना रहना बेहतर है. अगर 10 है आपके क्वेश्चंस तो 200 आपका सैंपल साइज इज गुड. फिर आपके सॉफ्टवेयर भी आपको सपोर्ट करता है और आपका एनालिसिस भी बहुत ज्यादा रेजिलियंट होता है, रोबस्ट होता है. सो 5 गुना होना चाहिए बेयर मिनिमम, बट अगर 20 गुना है तो योर वर्क इज सिंपली ब्यूटिफुल, डिपेंडिंग अपॉन आपके क्वेश्चंस कितने हैं. सो जितने क्वेश्चन है उसका कम से कम 5 गुना और ज्यादा से ज्यादा 20 गुना ले लीजिए, and your data is done. Now, once that is there, you select a factor method, common factor analysis or component method that we will see while we practice on the software. Then you specify the factor matrix. It means you define the nomenclature when, जैसे पिछले वाले स्लाइड में हमने देखा था, राइट? सो ये वेरिएबल 1 हमने ये किया था, सॉफ्टवेयर आपको ये बना के देगा, सॉफ्टवेयर बोलेगा ये चार जो है ये भाई बहन है, तो आपको पता चल गया कि ये एक फैमिली है, वेरिएबल 1 है, बट वो फैमिली को नाम देने का काम आपका रहेगा। अच्छा, अरे ये ABCD जो दिख रहे हैं मुझे, ये एक फैमिली के है, एक है, तो इनका नेचर देख के मुझे समझ में आ रहा है सॉफ्टवेयर बस यहाँ हेल्प करेगा, बट उसको नाम देने का काम, उस फैमिली को नाम देने का काम आप देंगे। फॉर एग्जाम्पल ये 4 देख लिया मैंने और मैं बोल रही अरे ये तो वेलबींग है, वेलबींग के इंडाइसेस है, राइट? ये 4 देख लिया मैंने और मैंने बताया अरे ये तो जॉब सेटिस्फैक्शन है, राइट? सो ये नाम देने का काम आपका रहेगा, बिकॉज आपकी थेरोटिकल अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, आपने लिटरेचर रिव्यू किया, सॉफ्टवेयर ने नहीं किया। And last is selecting a rotational method, which after you select a rotational method, you define which rotational method you want, whether you want an oblique method or an orthogonal method. अब ये oblique क्या, orthogonal क्या है, we would need a lot of time to speak about that. But mostly orthogonal is helpful for us, right? Oblique is also helpful, I'm not denying it. But generally in social sciences, mostly in management science, orthogonal works, and most importantly, Varimax works. Varimax. Right? If there is a need for rotation, then after you get that, you get interpreting the rotated factor matrix, and then you re-specify it. Finally, you validate the factor, which is again a human work, right? There are reiterations. If there is a yes, then it goes back to the factor method. If it's no, it's again. So this is जब हम लोग सॉफ्टवेयर यूज करेंगे तब हमें ये सारी ही चीजें पता चले। यहाँ तक कॉन्सेप्ट में किसी को कोई दिक्कत है? नहीं है तो हम सॉफ्टवेयर पे चलते हैं। I understand there are no questions. So what we would do is we would try to तब तक मैं अपने दूसरे सिस्टम में से मीनवाइल आपकी कोई क्वेश्चन है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं, तब तक मैं ये कर रही हूँ कि मैं अपना डेटा ओपन कर रही हूँ। So I'm stopping here. We will see an illustration of the SPSS of factor analysis. So just a minute. Stop sharing. And now, whoever is on the system, please allow me to share from the other laptop. Radhika, are you there? Or Lad Madam is there?
Your other laptop name, can you?
Krishna Priya R. Krishna Priya. No, R Krishna Priya must be.
Okay.
Okay, so please allow me to share the screen there.
नहीं मैम, एक ही दिख रहा है आपका।
ये हो, अभी कुछ दिख रहा है आपको?
हाँ हाँ मैम, स्क्रीन आ गई।
Okay. संदीप जी प्लीज अपना म्यूट कीजिएगा अपना लैपटॉप। Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to open my SPSS so that I can make a representation of how factor analysis is done on. Acha, first of all, before that, Does everyone wants to see a SPSS demonstration, or should we continue with the slideshow?
Ma'am, can
SPSS.
we see little bit? Can we get a little bit idea on that how it is, and after that we can continue with the slideshow, please.
Sure. So what I'm that is what I wanted to, because I just wanted to give you a flavor of it. क्योंकि पूरा
Exactly, ma'am. Thank you.
SPSS पूरा तो हो ही नहीं सकता है. That's not possible. Has the screen changed at your end?
No, ma'am.
No. So stop share. Again, I try to share. I hope this is available. Now you people can see the
Yes, ma'am.
screen,
Yes,
right? So this is how an SPSS looks like. And I'm not going to speak about the different parts of it and blah, blah, blah. Will not speak much about it. So how is the factor analysis done? Now let me show the variable view of the SPSS. Now these many variables I have. Now what do I mean by a variable here? As far as this is concerned, these are the questions that I have asked my respondents. So the items that I have asked my respondents is all there. So I have asked 7 questions about a certain in total, I had asked 7 plus 4, 11, 11 plus 6. 11 plus 7 is 11 plus 7 is 18. 18 plus 5 is 23, and 23 plus 8 is 31, and 31 plus 7. 31 plus 7 is 38. So in total, it simply says that in total, I have asked 38 questions to my respondents on how comfortable. Now, this is a standard data that I have taken from the internet. It's not my data. I don't work on factor analysis. So I have no data that is around factor analysis. So there are 38 response questions that I have asked, and these are the demographic variables: age, experience, gender, frequency, and all that is experience is the demographic variables. So in total 38 मैंने पूछे हैं questions. तो 38 पूछे तो कितने होने चाहिए responses मेरे कम से कम? कितने रेस्पोंडेंट से मैंने लेना चाहिए? अभी हमने क्या देखा था स्लाइड शो पे? कम से कम 5 गुना ज्यादा होना चाहिए, राइट? सो 38 क्वेश्चंस पूछे हैं, तो कम से कम मेरा सैंपल साइज होना चाहिए 200 का, राइट? 38 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 5 टाइम्स इज 200 का, कम से कम 200 का होना चाहिए. देन फैक्टर एनालिसिस वर्क्स. मेरा कितना है जो डेटा यहाँ पे, उसका 377 है. So does it make a good data? Yes, it does. Because जो bare minimum है उससे ज्यादा ही है हमारा, जहाँ पे 200 का सैंपल साइज होना चाहिए, हमारा ऑलमोस्ट डबल है. So around 10 टाइम्स ज्यादा है. So once I put, मैंने क्या किया यहाँ पे क्या हुआ है, जो क्वेश्चनर्स है वो लिया हमने, और उसका जो प्लॉटिंग है ऑन द स्केल ऑफ 1 to 5, 1 to 4 जो भी है, वो सारा हमने डाल लिया है. डालने के बाद अब मुझे फैक्टर एनालिसिस करना है. मुझे फैक्टर एनालिसिस करना है, यानी सिंपली मुझे ये करना है, कि मुझे क्लस्टर करने हैं उनको, मुझे साथ में उनको क्लस्टर करने हैं. यानी जो भाई बहन है उन सबको साथ में बिठाना है. अलग अलग फैमिली, जैसे समझिए एक शादी है या एक फंक्शन है, उसमें पूरी दुनिया से लोग आ गए हैं, बट पूरी दुनिया के लोगों से बात करना इज इम्पॉसिबल फॉर यू. तो आप क्या बोल रहे हो? आप ये बोल रहे हो कि इतने लोग आए हैं, 400 या 377, अराउंड 400 लोग आए हैं, बट मैं 400 लोगों को कैसे उनको एड्रेस करो? तो आप ये करते हो कि सारे फैमिलीज जो है, एक सरनेम वाली फैमिली को आप साथ में बिठा रहे हो, राइट? तो सारे जो पाटिल है वो साथ में बैठ रहे हैं, जो सारे जॉर्ज है वो उनको अलग साथ में बिठा रहे हैं, सारे जो खान है उनको साथ में बिठा रहे हो, सारे जो सिंह है उन सबको साथ में बिठा रहे हो. वो बिठाने का काम, क्लस्टरिंग वाला काम इज व्हाट फैक्टर एनालिसिस डज. तो आपने जो क्वेश्चंस पूछे हैं वो सबको, जो सेम नेचर्ड क्वेश्चंस है उनको साथ में छाट के देगा फैक्टर एनालिसिस आपको, और वो छाट के देने के बाद you will give them names. So the family names are nothing but the variables. How do you do factor analysis? मैं यहाँ से थोड़ा slow जा रही हूँ. You go to analyze, you go to analyze, you go to dimension reduction. Again, I am saying you go to analyze, you go to dimension reduction, and then in dimension reduction, you have factor. This is nothing but factor analysis. You click on factor analysis. You see this new window wherein you see all the variables that are there, right? So you see all those variables that are there. अब मुझे देखना है कि कौन सी इसमें ऐसे क्वेश्चंस है जो मैं छाटना चाहती हूँ इनटू वन फैमिली. सो मेरे जितने भी इंडिपेंडेंट डिपेंडेंट सारे वेरिएबल्स है, जो क्वेश्चंस है, सारे क्वेश्चंस मैंने सेलेक्ट कर लिए, राइट. डेमोग्राफिक वेरिएबल्स मैं सेलेक्ट नहीं करूंगी बिकॉज दे कैन नॉट बी क्लस्टर्ड फॉर ऑब्वियस रीजंस. वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू गो इनटू द डेप्थ ऑफ. सो जितने भी मेरे डिपेंडेंट इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल्स है मैंने सेलेक्ट किया और इस वाले बक्से में डाल दिया, राइट. आई हैव पुट इट हियर. देन आई गो टू एक्सट्रैक्शन. मैंने बताया था आपको एक्सट्रैक्शन मेथड हमें डिसाइड कर स्पेसिफाई करना होता है. जनरली एक्सट्रैक्शन मेथड जो है वो प्रिंसिपल कंपोनेंट्स ही होता है फॉर सोशल साइंसेस. मैक्सिमम लाइक्लीहुड होता है कुछ केस स्टडी वाले काइंड ऑफ इसमें, बट प्रिंसिपल कंपोनेंट्स डिफॉल्ट है वो वैसे ही रहे. Second, you need to extract, you can also tell your software how many factors do you want to extract. You can say fixed number of factors and you can define मुझे 5 वेरिएबल्स चाहिए या 5 फैक्टर्स चाहिए, वो भी करेगा. या उसको आप बोले कि आइजन वैल्यू यानी वो वैल्यू जो एग्जैक्टली एक्सट्रैक्ट करता है आपके वेरिएबल. सो द सॉफ्टवेयर हैज इट एम्बेडेड. जनरली आइजन वैल्यू के हिसाब से हम लोग जाते हैं आइजन वैल्यू ऑफ 1. कुछ लोग उसे ज्यादा करते हैं फिनेंस वाले, बट देन 1 इज द आइडियल सिचुएशन. देन यू क्लिक कंटिन्यू. रोटेशन, राइट. मैं आपको याद होगा मैंने बताया था रोटेशन जनरली वैरीमैक्स में, सोशल साइंस में वैरीमैक्स यूज होता है. सो कंटिन्यू. कोएफिशिएंट नहीं, इसकी जरूरत नहीं है. एंड ऑप्शंस में व्हाट डू आई डू? आई सप्रेस. क्योंकि अगर किसी का फैक्टर लोडिंग, समझिए 2 लोगों का डीएनए अगर 30% के ऊपर मैच करता है तो वो भाई बहन हुए ना. 30% से नीचे या 40% से नीचे तो वो शायद दूर के रिश्तेदार भी हो सकते हैं. सो यू नीड टू टेल देम कि कितना परसेंट मैच है अगर 2 वेरिएबल्स में या 2 क्वेश्चंस में, तो उन्हें साथ में डालें. तो जनरली फॉर सोशल साइंसेस इट हैज टू बी 30 or 40%. 30 or 40%. सॉरी 0.30 या 30%, जो भी आप बोलना चाहते हैं, 30% या 40%. सो व्हाट डू आई डू? आई से कि जितने भी कोएफिशिएंट, जितने भी रिश्ता 30% के नीचे है वो दिखाइए ही मत मुझे. जो 30% के ऊपर मैच कर रहे हैं 2 आइटम्स वही दिखाइए. So I have suppressed it to 30, or someone can also put it as 0.40. Continue. And then I click a OK. Then I click a OK. I hope again the screen is not visible. So I'm stopping the share. And again, I will share the screen. Every time there is a screen change in the screen. So this is the output that we have received. This is the output that we have received. वो बता रहा है कि पहले वाले का, और so it shows that to what extent they have extracted. Now we are not interested in it. There will be n number of statistics we are not interested in. What we are interested in is the first, to validate your structure, total variance explain. It says कि अगर आपके 6 variables है, if there are 6, हम 6 families को cluster करते हैं, तो almost 67.95 यानी 68% of your data gets explained. we can explain the variance of 70% of your data or 68% of your data if there are 6 variables. अगर 5 वेरिएबल्स तो ओनली 61%, और अगर एक वेरिएबल में सारे आइटम्स डालते हैं हम लोग, या 38 आइटम्स डालते हैं, 38 क्वेश्चन, तो सिर्फ 14% ही डिफाइन होगा, यानी आपका वर्क 14% ही रेलेवेंट होगा। तो आपको क्योंकि ज्यादा से ज्यादा चाहिए, आप बोलते हो 6 वेरिएबल्स पे 67% हो रहा है या 70% के आसपास हो रहा है, तो 6 वेरिएबल्स इज अ आइडियल नंबर। नाउ टोटल वेरिएंस एक्सप्लेन्ड helps you to identify कि कितने variables मेरा data define कर रहा है, cluster कर रहा है। Now this is total variance explained. Next is component matrix. Component matrix tells you कि ये 6 variables हमने ऊपर देखा था, 6 variables आपका 70% डेटा एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है। तो आप देखिए सॉफ्टवेयर ने उसे 6 वेरिएबल्स में डाला और ये बता रहा है कि कौन सा वेरिएबल कौन से इस पे कितना एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है। यानी पहला वाला वेरिएबल 63% बिलोंग करता है फैमिली 2 को, सेकेंड वाला वेरिएबल 73% बिलोंग करता है फैमिली 2 को, और 37% बिलोंग करता है फैमिली 3 को। तो ऑब्वियसली आप कौन सा लेंगे? 73 वाला ही लेंगे। अच्छा, आप बोलेंगे मैम बाकी के बक्से क्यों खाली है? बाकी के बक्से इसलिए खाली है क्योंकि हमने पहले डिफाइन किया था कि 30% के नीचे जो भी लोडिंग्स है वो हमें ना दिखाए, इसलिए आपको जितने भी दिखेंगे वो 30%। ये जो खाली बक्से है इसका मतलब ये है कि इनकी लोडिंग यानी उस फैमिली से वो बिलोंग करते थे 30% से कम, इसीलिए सॉफ्टवेयर आपको दिखाई नहीं रहा है। सो दिस इज हाउ इट इज नाउ। This is how it is. Now you see. If you see here, the first 7 variables, that is first 7 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they belong to family 2. They simply belong to family 2. तो क्या हो रहा है, ये जो 7 क्वेश्चंस है, सिंपली सॉफ्टवेयर ने क्या किया, 7 क्वेश्चंस जो थे उसको साथ में उसको चेक किया, उसका डीएनए चेक किया फॉर एग्जाम्पल, और देखा अरे ये 7 लोग तो एक ही फैमिली के हैं, इनका बहुत हद तक सारे ही कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स सेम है, तो ये 7 लोग एक फैमिली के हैं और वो फैमिली का नाम है अभी के लिए सॉफ्टवेयर के हिसाब से नंबर 2, फैमिली नंबर 2। अब ये फैमिली नंबर 2 सुनने में अटपटा लगता है, सो व्हाट डू, यू गिव अ नेम टू अ फैमिली नंबर 2। यू से अच्छा फैमिली नंबर 2, सारे जो क्वेश्चंस है वो लग रहे हैं एंजाइटी से रिलेटेड, सो आपने नाम दे दिया उसको एंजाइटी। सो दिस फैमिली 2 और वेरिएबल 2 इज एंजाइटी। अगेन योर क्वेश्चन नंबर 8, 9, 10, 11, 8, 9, 10, 11 look to be one family. Why? Because all of them are loaded onto variable number 6. All of them are loaded onto variable number 6. So ये 4 again are one family.
Ma'am, are you speaking?
हेलो मैम।
आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है मैम।
Am I audible to everyone?
नाउ
या राइट नाउ।
Yes, now, right now.
Am I audible to everyone?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
No.
ma'am. Yes,
यस
yes,
मैम।
yes, yes, ma'am.
Right answer.
Recording in progress.
Can everyone hear me?
मैम प्लीज अनम्यूट योर माइक।
आपको आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
Ma'am, we are not able to hear you.
Radhika, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Voice is tracking,
मैम
ma'am.
योर वॉइस इज इकोइंग।
Maybe network issue.
Okay, so that was factor analysis. Everyone must have seen it. So what did factor analysis do? Factor analysis ने हमारे जो 38 questions थे उसको reduce किया statistically and then it gave us just 6 variables. What is more easier to process 38 variables or to process 6 variables? Easy क्या है? 38 variables को process करना या 6 variables को process करना?
6 मैम।
6 variable.
So, factor analysis statistically helped us objectively without any subjective intervention. It helped us to define 38 variables को shrink करके. It helped us to. It helped us. Not start sharing while the other part is okay. I stop here. Okay. So what happened? So we had 36 variables in all. These are 38. हमने जब काउंट किया था, अगर हम नीचे तक जाते हैं, you will see that there are 38 variables. 38 variables को factor analysis ने क्या किया? 6 variables में define किया. और 6 variables भी कैसे? Statistically, objectively. उसने बोला कि भाई ये ऐसा ऐसा है और फिर that is how it happens. So, see, what did it do? 38 variables total. It made it into families. Family जिसके बारे में वो confused था उसने ये भी बताया कि भाई ये जो दो लोग हैं, ये जो एक इंसान है, ये दोनों ही फैमिलीज का लग रहा है. तो आप देख लो क्या करना है. फिर आप क्या करते हो? दो चीजें करते हो. एक, You see statistically कौन से फैमिली में ज्यादा लोड कर रहा है, राइट? तो मैंने देखा तीसरे वाले फैमिली में ज्यादा लोड कर रहा है 0.562, तो मैंने बोला अरे भाई ये तो तीसरे वाले का है। या मैं अपना जो लिटरेचर रिव्यू वाला जो नॉलेज है वो देखती हूँ और बोलती हूँ अरे भाई स्टैटिस्टिकली तो ये फैमिली 3 में जाता है, क्योंकि ज्यादा उसकी वैल्यू फैमिली 3 में है, बट देन मेरे हिसाब से फैमिली 1, थेरोटिकली फैमिली 1 का वो ज्यादा है। तो देन यू कैन टेक अ कॉल एंड यू से कि ओके दिस आइटम, दिस D_qual_6 वाला जो आइटम है वो स्टैटिस्टिकली लोड कर रहा है फैमिली 3 में, बट थेरोटिकली मेरा जो लिटरेचर रिव्यू का जो नॉलेज है उसके हिसाब से वो फैमिली 1 में जाना चाहिए और मैं इसे फैमिली 1 में ही कंसिडर कर। So this is what a factor analysis is. So factor analysis is used in 2 times. One, when you have loads of variables and you want to shrink them into palatable, into easily consumable number of variables, then you use factor analysis, one thing. Or second thing, the application of factor analysis for the second time is when you are developing a scale, when you are developing an instrument, then you use factor analysis. So factor analysis 2 टाइम काम आता है। और मैंने देखा है कि हमारे यूनिवर्सिटी के जो स्टूडेंट्स काम करते हैं, मैंने क्यों फैक्टर एनालिसिस लिया आज के सेशन में, क्योंकि मैंने देखा है कि स्टूडेंट्स पहले अपना क्वेश्चनर बनाते हैं और उसमें मैंने देखा है कि कम से कम 20 से ज्यादा ही क्वेश्चंस होते हैं। सो 20 से ज्यादा क्वेश्चंस है और 20 को प्रोसेस करना इज ऑलमोस्ट वेरी टफ, और 20 के ग्राफ बनाते हैं, सो इट्स वेरी टफ। सो व्हाट डज फैक्टर एनालिसिस हेल्प यू? इट हेल्प्स यू टू क्लस्टर देम एंड मेक 20 क्वेश्चंस के, अगर समझिए 5 फैक्टर्स आ गए या 4 फैक्टर्स आ गए, तो आपको 4 वेरिएबल्स को ही डिफाइन करना पड़ेगा या हैंडल करना पड़ेगा, ना कि 20 को। So this is how it helps. Factor analysis helps. Any questions here? ये सॉफ्टवेयर हैंडल करते वक्त किसी को कोई क्वेश्चन पूछना है? Does anyone wants to ask any question around it? No? So then I would go to multiple. Regression. I hope factor analysis में कोई question नहीं था. Okay, so we will go on to regression analysis. The next level that I wanted to speak about today was regression analysis. Regression analysis is the next step of factor analysis. Factor analysis ने क्या किया? उसने डेटा reduce करके दिया, जहाँ पे 20 वेरिएबल्स थे उसको उसने 5 किया, या जहाँ पे 38 वेरिएबल्स थे उसने उसको 6 किया। डेटा में हमने देखा 38 वेरिएबल्स को उसने 6 वेरिएबल्स बना के दिया। सो ये तो हो गया, बट अब ये 6 वेरिएबल्स को अपने प्रोसेस करना है। You have to process these 6 variables also so that you have an inference. You have a contribution of your research. So what in these 6 variables, you divide them into independent and dependent variables, which you already know owing to your literature review. Owing to your literature review, you already know which are dependent and which are independent variables. And then you try to regress these 2 independent variables and dependent variables to make a sense of their relationship, to make an inference of their relationship or association. That is what a regression analysis is. Multiple regression analysis is a technique that can be used to analyze a relationship between single dependent dependent variable and several independent variable. It simply means you have one matricular dependent variable and you have multiple matricular or non-matricular independent variables. So if I understand that dependent variable A is influenced by independent variable 1, independent variable 2, independent variable 3, and independent variable n. Independent variable n. So this is what a regression analysis is. So regression analysis ये बताता है कि dependent variable तो एक ही है, but वो dependent variable को influence करने वाले independent variable बहुत सारे हैं, और ये independent variables सारे मिला के कितना % A को define करते हैं. That is again called as an R square value, which we will see. What percentage of it is explained by these dependent variables is what a independent variable does. Right? But iska ek thumb rule कि the dependent variable has to be matricular. Independent variables could be matricular or non-matricular, right? So, but then dependent variable has to be a matricular term, a numerical term, a metric, right? So with this, let us go and define this. So x1, x2, x3, xn are nothing but v1, v2, v3, vn, which I have said here. And y1, that is a dependent variable, is nothing but what I have demonstrated here as A. Now, how does a regression equation look like? So this is a regression equation, multiple regression equations. मेरे दो independent variables है x1, x2. मेरा एक डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल है प्रेडिक्टेड वेलबींग, जिसको हमने पिछले वाले इक्वेशन में बोला था y1 या a, जो आप कहना चाहो. So my well-being, predicted well-being is explained by two components. One is x1, another is x2. Now what do I say? x1 जो वेरिएबल है उसका इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल है फैमिली साइज, और दूसरा है फैमिली इनकम. So my well-being, it means my happiness. मेरा लिटरेचर रिव्यू ये बताता है कि मेरा जो हैप्पीनेस है वो डिफाइन करता है मेरा फैमिली साइज और फैमिली इनकम, राइट? So these are the two independent variables. Then I have a constant. I have a constant to understand family size and family income, and which is again a statistical term. And next is the beta coefficients. हम इसमें interested हैं. We are only interested in beta coefficients, B1 and B2. Most important for us is B1 and B2. Why? Because ये हमें सॉफ्टवेयर देगा. वैसे सॉफ्टवेयर आपको EB also will use the beta coefficients. But then what am I interested in? I'm more interested in the beta coefficients. Tell me, it's one defining the well-being, and what percentage of family income, that is X2, is defining well-being. Right? So मैं B1 और B2 में ज़्यादा interested हूँ, and that is what regression analysis helps me to understand. Now, what is the process of regression equation? Again, you define a research problem by defining the objectives and the dependent and independent variables which you derive from your literature review. So, iska input of this stage comes from the literature review. After literature review, what happens is you design a research. किसी को कुछ पूछना है? Okay, so once we have it, आपको याद होगा हमने जब factor analysis के बारे में बात की थी, I said it has to be minimum 50 and a good factor analysis should have minimum 5 times the number of questions, and 10 times or 20 times is fabulous, right? But when it comes to regression equation, the sample size minimum can be 50, but for a software to work, it should be 100 plus. So factor analysis में जहाँ पे मैं 50 का bare minimum sample size बता रही थी, यहाँ पे भी 50 ही बता रही हूँ. But software को काम करने के लिए you need to have a sample size of at least, that's the bare minimum. That's the bare qualifier is 100. 100 का sample size होना चाहिए, which gives you a statistical power एंड अ जनरलाइजेबिलिटी। क्यों सैम्पल साइज बड़ा होना चाहिए? ताकि आपका रिसर्च जनरलाइजेबल रहे यूनिवर्स के साथ, वरना पता चला आपका रिसर्च आपने कर दिया, हो गया, और वो बस सोसाइटी के काम नहीं आ रहा है, देन इट्स रॉन्ग। सो जितना बड़ा सैम्पल साइज रहेगा तो आपका जनरलाइजेबिलिटी ज्यादा रहेगी, बट ट्राई not to have your sample size beyond 1000. Don't have a sample size of 1000. Don't have a sample size of beyond 1000, because that will actually make your data very complacent. And what does a complacence mean? It will not reflect the genuine work, right? Because it will become perfectly normal and hence the whole issue will go off. So 1000 का मत रखिएगा sample size generally, अगर आप multiple regression, मैं ये सिर्फ multiple regression के बारे में बोल रही हूँ। अगेन assumptions जो हमने पहले वाले स्लाइड में देखा था, नॉर्मैलिटी, लीनियरिटी, होमोस्केडास्टिसिटी, आउटलायर्स नहीं होने चाहिए, blah blah blah. Then select an estimation technique which we will see in the software. Examine the statistics. मैंने बताया था बीटा वैल्यू हमारे लिए सबसे ज्यादा important है. That is what a coefficient of determination is. Right? So you get the coefficient, you get the adjusted coefficient, you get the standard error, and you get a significance, statistical significance, which indicates your generalizability. To what extent your data is generalizable is defined by this. And last is you interpret the regression based on the beta coefficients that you receive, the independent variable, and blah, blah, blah. That I don't think we need to speak about. So what we are interested in is the beta coefficient, the adjusted coefficients, the standard error, and the statistical significance. Why? Because this is what the equation is. This is what the multiple regression equation is. So that is why we are interested in it. Now let's see the illustration of it. I have 10 more minutes, so I will demonstrate the software, and then for the last 5 minutes, we will take questions. So now I'm sharing my screen. But before that, what I will do is close the earlier. Any questions on factor analysis? If no, then I would close this. Okay, I'm stopping to share. I will again share my screen. And this time we are going to. This is the same data that I am opening. पहले जो data था वही data है, but इस data में I have given one treatment. पहले वाले data में हमने देखा था we had 38 questions, that is 38 variables, which we shrunk to 6. Now what did I do? That shrunk, whichever data that we have shrunk, जो 38 को हमने 6 variables में convert किया था factor analysis से. Now what we are doing is that we are turning into that we are okay. So वो जो 6 थे उनको मैंने अभी I think शेयर नहीं हुआ है स्क्रीन, राइट? SPSS का आपको दिख रहा है स्क्रीन?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am, no.
होप अभी दिखना चाहिए. Yes, I hope now it is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
पहले जो 48 जो थे क्वेश्चन वेरिएबल्स, उसको हमने फैक्टर एनालिसिस करके ये बताया था कि भाई जो है 6 फैक्टर्स ही है, 6 वेरिएबल्स को मैंने यहाँ पे ये किया है. देखिए आप 1 2 3 4 5 and 6. तो क्या हुआ, अभी तक मुझे क्या करना पड़ रहा था, मुझे 48 वेरिएबल्स को आई हैड टू हैंडल 48 वेरिएबल्स. फैक्टर एनालिसिस has helped me to make it into 6 variables, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I gave some name to it, right? We will not go into the fundamentals of the naming because then I will have to tell you the whole nature of research, which we don't have much time. So 6 variables. So अभी simple सी बात है, 38 variables handle करना was super complex. अभी 6 variables को manage करना is much easier for me. So मैंने फैक्टर एनालिसिस के लिए मैंने डेटा कलेक्ट किया, फैक्टर एनालिसिस किया, 48 क्वेश्चन वेरिएबल्स को 6 में बांटा. अब ये 6 को मैं हैंडल करूंगी थ्रू व्हाट, थ्रू मल्टीपल रिग्रेशन, थ्रू मल्टीपल रिग्रेशन. एंड अभी जैसे आपको याद होगा, आई सेड व्हेन यू आर लुकिंग एट मल्टीपल रिग्रेशन यू शुड डिफाइन डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल एंड इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल्स. And the khasiyat of multiple regression is you should only have one dependent variable. You can have any number of independent variables, but you need to have only one dependent variable. My dependent variable is mean underscore use. So the one that you are finding highlighted, this is my dependent variable. एक लौता dependent variable चाहिए मुझे. So एक लौता dependent variable is this use. एंड बाकी के जो 5 है वो मेरे इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल्स हैं, वॉल, एक्विजिशन, प्लेफुलनेस, यूज एंड एंजाइटी. सो ये जो 5 है ये मेरे, ये 5 जो है ये मेरे इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल्स है, और ये जो आखिरी वाला है वो मेरा डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल. नाउ आई हैव आल्सो डिफाइंड माय वेरिएबल्स. Now when I have this clarity in mind, when I have this research structure in mind, wherein one dependent variable is being influenced by 6 independent variables, right? I am clear about this. 4, 5, and then 6. So I have 5 independent variables and one dependent variable. So I have the structure clear in my mind. This is my research structure. This is independent variable 1, independent variable 2, 3, 4, 5, right? This is clear with me. Now once I have this clear, what do? I do a regression. How do I do that? How do I do that? I go to analyze. दिख रहा है सबको? I go to analyze, regression. I'm going slow here. Analyze, regression. And in regression, I have linear. Remember, I said there has to be a linear relationship. So linear, the graph goes either upwards or below. So there has to be a linear relationship, which your literature review tells you these variables have a linear relationship. So analyze, regression, and linear. Click that. Now, am I handling these 48 variables? No, I'm not handling. I'm only handling these 6 variables because factor analysis has helped me. So what is my dependent variable? My dependent variable is use. I put that into use. And then my independent variables are 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I select all of those. I put that into independent box. Now I go to statistics. And then just yes. All the default ones are perfect for me. So the basic studies that we do, all the default ones are okay. So we need the estimates, regression coefficient in the form of estimates. We want a model fit. We want a research that is actually very robust. So we select model fit. If you want to, you can put collinearity diagnostics, which tell that if they are if they are twins in the association, something like that. So collinearity diagnostics, if you want to, you can. Otherwise, all the default ones are okay. Then plots, at this point, I don't think we need to represent that. Then options. If you have missing data, then you need to select these. But then I presume हमारा जो assumption क्या था कि none of the data is missing, right? So अगर कोई missing data वाले हैं, then you have to put replace with mean or exclude pairwise or listwise, whatever you want to. But for now, I don't think we need it, right? And then you say, okay, यहाँ तक ठीक है सबके लिए? Then you say an okay. Then you get an input. मुझे फिर से शायद स्टॉप शेयर करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि आपको नया स्क्रीन नहीं दिख रहा है. Now this is the output screen. Just a minute, I think it is coming. Now you have the output screen here. How do you read it? Let's read it together. This was the method that we used for regression, right? So it will tell you which method have you used. Then what do? Then we see this model fitness. It is called as a model fitness summary. Yeah, model fit, whatever you want to say it. Model fit tells you कि कितना आपका जो study है relevant है. To what extent it is universally generalizable. To what extent it is important. It will tell you. So you need to see two things. R and R square. R and R square. R tells you that to 59% or 60% of the world, which represents your universe, in that 59% of the times your research is relevant. आपका research relevant है 60% के आसपास. बाकी के 40% में आपका study generalizable नहीं है क्योंकि maybe factors change होंगे, nature change होगा, variables change होंगे, situation change होगा, subject change होगा, whatever it is, right? So for that very simple reason, it is not. And adjusted R square tells you the minimum percent whether it is generalizable. So कम से कम 34% of the times तो आपका research के जो findings है वो ditto काम आएंगे. So 40%, sorry, 35% or 34.5% times तो आपका research completely relevant है. That is what your adjusted R square tells. Now you may ask me, ma'am, what is the threshold? The threshold should be at least 40-45. इस data में सिर्फ 34% है. But social sciences का data अगर आप regress कर रहे हो तो adjusted R square value कम से कम 40 के ऊपर होना चाहिए और 45 के ऊपर रहे तो बहुत अच्छा. Right? This is how you read the model summary. Now let's go on to the real. Okay. Let's go on to the real something that we are interested in. These are the coefficients. We are interested in the coefficients. मैंने बताया था आपको याद है beta value. So we are interested in beta value, and these are the beta values. This and this are the beta values. What are we interested in? We are interested in standardized coefficients, standardized beta values. We are not interested in unstandardized coefficients. We are interested if you are a student of finance. So for students of finance, unstandardized coefficients are relevant. For behavioral studies, standardized coefficients are relevant. So now what happens is, so now what do we do is, अब ये बीटा कोएफिशिएंट को इंटरप्रेट कैसे करें हम? इंटरप्रेट ये है कि हमारा डिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल क्या था? use of a certain commodity is explained by, use of a certain commodity is explained by B0 is this constant. इक्वेशन याद है रिग्रेशन का 1.b0 बीटा 0 जो था दैट इज कांस्टेंट 1.475 plus b1 that is beta 1 is this minus 0.050 times anxiety. एंजाइटी कहाँ से आया क्योंकि हमारा इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल 1 एंजाइटी है प्लस 0.110 टाइम्स ऑफ सेकंड क्या है हमारा यूज सी यूज प्लस plus 0.086 times third that is playful. ये है हमारा रिग्रेशन इक्वेशन बाकी के मैं ले नहीं रही हूँ वरना बाकी और 3 वेरिएबल्स हैं राइट so your regression equation is something like this. So how do we interpret it? It plus into minus is equal to minus. So ये plus निकल जाएगा यहाँ पे. So plus into minus is minus. So it shows that anxiety is the use of a certain software is influenced by 5% negatively by the anxiety of a person. So use और anxiety का जो relationship है वो negative है, linear है but negative है, and anxiety influences use to 5%, 0.05. So 5% negatively because it's a negative, it's a negative. Now how do we interpret it? The playfulness of a certain software influences its usage by 8%, 8.6% positively. So अगर कोई सॉफ्टवेयर बहुत ज्यादा एंटरटेनिंग प्लेफुल होता है तो उसका 8% से इजाफा हो जाता है उसके यूज का. So people to 8% increase their use. So that is what it means. 19% is influenced by the act and 36% is influenced by the qualification skill, right? The more a person is qualified to use a certain software, they use it more by 36%. If they have reached a certain skill, then their increase of usage increases by 19% and blah, blah, blah. So that is how it is. Now, this is what is explained through the software. Multicollinearity मुझे नहीं लगता ज़्यादा important है, but multicollinearity में variance inflation factor देखेंगे आप VIF और variance inflation factor हमेशा 4 के अंदर हो तो अच्छा है. 4 is an alarm और 10 is dangerous. 10 means your model is not fit, right? So हमारे variance inflation factor is much below 4, so it means our model is the research model is a good model. So that is what it means. I think with that we can stop and we can take questions if you have any. I think with this, I think we can, with this, we can stop the questions, if any, and if you.
Okay, I think no queries, ma'am. I would like to conclude.
Okay, if there are no questions, is there anything that I want to speak about? Okay, collinearity diagnostics तो हमने मैंने variance inflation factor भी बता दिया, right? So this has to be above. Okay, fine. I think that is clear. Yes, if there are any questions, I would ask them I would let students ask them. Are there any questions? Are there any? None. If there are none, we can close the session.
No queries, ma'am.
Okay.
I would like to conclude this session by showing heartful gratitude to Priya ma'am for your guidance. As Priya ma'am introduced us about multivariate data analysis with SPSS, also the practical demonstration of software with examples. It is beneficial, ma'am. Thank you. I declare that session is over. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.